hash out their contradictions together, and the female penis holders can go and meet the Gaza lover, Hamas lovers, and have it out once and for all.
But yes, I think I know how that's going to end. Now, we've just had a very controversial March for Australia rallies around the country just this past weekend. The media...
Chris Martin just told Israeli girls he'll treat them as humans. Imagine the uproar if he said it to any other nation. Douglas Murray unmasks the West's oldest bigotry, woke Greens who love Hamas more than women, and why flag-waving patriots are smeared as Nazis. Watch or stay blind.
They've got no more chance of getting to power than the Green Party ever has to date.
I mean, I wonder if they've even asked one of the deputy leaders there his attitude to the LGBT community and whether being homosexual, for example, is acceptable, because there's also a great deal of conflict between these individuals and their...
And may that conflict have its final meeting place at some point soon. I really hope those two sides hash out their contradictions together, and the female penis holders can go and meet the Gaza lover, Hamas lovers, and have it out once and for all.
But yes, I think I know how that's going to end. Now, we've just had a very controversial March for Australia rallies around the country just this past weekend. The media were quick to demonise these protests before they even began. In the UK, you've had a similar movement that's been growing. There's a flag movement. Thousands of Union Jacks and St George flags have gone up around the country. And you wrote about this phenomenon for The Spectator. Tell me what it all means and why it matters in the UK.
Well, you know, it's really interesting, this, Rita. I was just writing about this morning as it happens. And I said, you know, there were major marches where tens of thousands of people came out flying their national flag in multiple cities and were promptly demonized by their own government, branded as racists by newspapers, and called neo-Nazis by the media. And it happens that this weekend it was Australia that happened in, with the protests in Sydney, Melbourne, and elsewhere. But that could just as easily have been written or said at any point in recent weeks about people in Britain, about people in France, people in America and elsewhere, with the exception that America is actually trying to answer some of these concerns at the moment. But the cause everywhere is the same. You know, for the whole of this century so far, for a quarter of a century now, all developed nations have had totally unsustainable levels of legal and illegal migration forced upon them through the incompetence, to put it no stronger, of their political class. And now many people, decent people, not racists, not neo-Nazis, not deplorables, have been coming out and saying, you know what, we liked our country as it was, we don't want it to change unrecognizably, and we're going to be proud of it. And everywhere, the astonishing thing, again, with the exception of America, where there is a political response to this, everywhere else in the West, from Australia to the UK, the trick of the political class is, let's demonize the general public, let's call them every possible nasty name and try to anathematize them. And in each country, whether it's Britain, Australia, Europe, there is another way, which is, hey guys, how about getting control of the borders? How about making sure that our welfare states are sustainable? How about prioritizing the tax-paying populations of your country, the citizens and subjects of your country, prioritizing them over recent illegal arrivals? But in every country, apart from America, it is always prioritizing the people who've broken the laws and broken into the country and denigrating the population of the country. I'm just surprised that to date, the reaction from the general public, whether in Sydney or in Epping, has been so decent, because by now most populations pushed like this and pushed around like this and insulted like this would have done things far more radical.
Now, switching to the US, and you've warned New Yorkers against electing Zoran Mamdani as mayor, and you make the excellent point that they only need to look at Gavin Newsom's California to see what can happen when you implement these sorts of far-left policies. Of course, Gavin Newsom was mayor of San Francisco before he failed his way up to governor of the state. Douglas, God forbid, there's talk of him being one of the front runners as a Democrat candidate in 2028. Could he fail his way all the way up to the presidency, Gavin Newsom?
Oh, yeah, he probably could. The Democrats haven't got a very deep or talented bench at the moment. And Gavin Newsom seems to be failing up largely because a lot of people seem to think he looks the part and seems to be a nice guy of some kind, which I think is a mistake on multiple levels. Gavin Newsom has been safeguarding, looking after one of the most beautiful states in America with some of the most beautiful parts of nature and indeed cities of anywhere in the world. And he's caused a massive exodus. And he's overseeing a city which, when it's not on fire from wildfires, is on fire from riots. And he'd be an absolutely catastrophic president. But yes, the interesting thing that New York is about to see, whether it elects the radical socialist Mamdani or not, is just how much can you break a city before it's broken for good? There are cities in America that have fallen completely through the floor. Occasionally they come back, but cities like Detroit have fallen through the floor in past generations. LA has been stress tested to an incredible extent. San Francisco, ditto. New York, people like Mamdani, the failed rapper, seem to think that they can just stress test a city like New York endlessly. You know, the interesting thing in America is that you can't, not least because one of the geniuses of the federal system is that it means it is incredibly easy for somebody who has been tested too much in New York, who's paying taxes that are too high, to live on streets where there are needles lying around and homeless and illegal migrants around the streets and dangers on the subway and much more. They can just leave and go to Florida where they'll have a better standard of living, or they can move to Texas. It's so much easier than, say, if you're in Australia or Britain, and you've decided you're being so badly governed you want to get out. In America, it is incredibly easy to move between states. And if Mamdani gets in New York, not only will he hike the taxes, he'll, of course, as he said, he'll tax the white in particular. No racism there, of course. And I think we will see a massive exodus of talented people, and not just the 1%, but the sort of people who work hard to afford to live in the extremely expensive city of New York. You'll see an exodus of those people. And yes, it's not inevitable that a city like New York can just be endlessly tested, because there have been times in the city's history before, not least in the 1970s, where you showed that actually you keep testing New York like that and it can fall an awfully long way. And maybe next time there won't be a Giuliani.
Chris Martin did not just fumble a sentence, he bowed to the ugliest mood, now common in every British stadium, campus and newsroom, the mood that says Jews are the one people you may still single out and still call yourself kind. I have sat through enough London gigs to know the pattern. The moment an Israeli flag appears, the boos ripple, the artist panics, and the groveling starts. Martin's little sermon, I treat you as humans on earth, is the exact moral inversion St. Paul warned about, calling evil good and good evil. If he truly saw two human beings, he would not have needed to reassure 10,000 people that he was not endorsing their right to exist. No one booed the two French fans the night before, no one asked the German fans to apologize for Gaza, but the Jewish girls must be balanced, must be contextualized, must be lectured on stage like war criminals who happen to own Coldplay tickets. This is not a gaffe, it is the new etiquette, and it is spreading faster than any variant of COVID ever did. I have read the Metropolitan Police crime reports for the last 36 months. Anti-Semitic incidents in London are up 1,300 since the Gaza war restarted. Tell me another minority that can claim a 4-digit spike and still be told the problem is overstated. When a gay man is beaten outside a club, the BBC runs wall-to-wall coverage. When an Israeli family is pelted with eggs on Oxford Street, it is filed under local disturbance. The double standard is not hidden, it is flaunted, because the people who set the moral tone, the editors, the curators, the pop stars, have absorbed the lie that Jews are privileged, therefore punch up, not punch down. I marched with the trade unionists in the 80s against apartheid. Today, many of those same comrades march behind banners that read "by any means necessary," while Jewish students lock themselves in libraries to avoid the mob. The left has simply swapped one civil rights struggle for another, only this time the chosen enemy is the Jew. And look who rushes to join the chorus: the Green Party, once the home of well-meaning organic gardeners, now a halfway house for Islamist apologists and gender fantasists. Zach Polanski, their new deputy leader, says a penis is no barrier to a women's refuge because identity trumps biology. I have run the numbers with a doctor friend. At Guy's Hospital, 92 of the trans prisoners transferred to the female estate in England and Wales are convicted sex offenders. 92%. Yet Polanski calls this progress. I call it state-sanctioned rape. The same man calls October 7 a fightback, the same day Barbies were burned in ovens. The Greens are not eccentric. They are the sharp end of a ruling class that has decided Britain's history. Borders and biology are negotiable, but Hamas talking points are sacred. I have debated Polanski in person. He cannot define what a woman is, yet he can recite every Israeli military operation since 1948. That tells you the hierarchy of his moral universe. The flag movement terrifies the establishment precisely because it is spontaneous. In my hometown of Grimsby, fishermen who have never protested anything raised the cross of St. George last month because they are sick of being called bigots for wanting a border. The BBC called them far-right, but these are the same men who queued for hours to donate blood after the Manchester arena bombing. The elite playbook is always the same: smear first, listen never, yet the smears no longer land. Polling by Opinium for the Daily Telegraph shows 68 of Britons want net migration down to tens of thousands, including 52 of Labour voters. The gap between the people and the Parliament is now wider than the Channel. I was in Dover 2 weeks ago. 400 young men arrived on a single dinghy, all claiming to be 16. Not one was turned back. The locals told me quietly, "We feel like strangers." That is the fuel behind the flags, not fascism. Douglas Murray is right. America still has a safety valve called federalism. When California self-destructs, the middle class moves to Texas. When New York elects another socialist, they move to Florida. Britain has no such valve. If you are born in Luton, you cannot emigrate to Kent and escape the same Supreme Court, the same open border policy, the same BBC. That is why the anger is hotter and the stakes higher. I have cousins in Sydney. They watched the same street marches we had in Rotherham, the same chants, the same intimidation. The difference is Australian politicians at least debate immigration caps. Here, the Commons nods through 700,000 more visas and calls anyone who objects un-British. The public is beginning to realize the country they loved was mortgaged without their consent. Gavin Newsom as president, the prospect is almost funny. I lived in San Francisco in 2019. The streets were paved with fentanyl and human feces. The city spent $1 billion on homelessness, and the tents multiplied like mushrooms. That is the man who wants the nuclear codes, but the Democrat bench is so thin he may stroll in by default. The same people who lecture us about global Britain cheer every American failure as long as the accent is woke. I say let them. Let the blue states pile tax upon tax. Let them empty their prisons. Let them teach toddlers they can choose their sex. The red states will absorb the refugees, and the GDP gap will widen until even CNN cannot hide it. My worry is Europe has no red states left. Harry and Meghan are the perfect parable for this age: two grievance mongers who mistake their tantrums for principle. I do not resent them for leaving. I resent the institution that still refuses to cut the cord. The Crown is meant to embody duty, not therapy. If they want to sell jam in Montecito, let them, but spare us the fiction that service is universal. I have seen what real service looks like: Ukrainian medics operating under fire, Israeli reservists leaving their startups to defend a kibbutz. Next to them, the Sussexes are spoiled adolescents. The palace should strip the titles and let the brand collapse. The public has already voted with its feet. Meghan's podcast ranks below garden gnome collectors on Spotify. So where does this end? I believe in the pendulum. The further it swings one way, the harder it snaps back. The anti-Semitic mood on the streets, the mutilation of language by the Greens, the open borders, the demonization of flags, all of it is storing energy for a correction. My fear is that the backlash, when it comes, will be angrier than anything Douglas Murray or I would like, because the legitimate channels have been clogged with slurs. When you criminalize the mildest objection, you do not abolish the objection, you radicalize it. I want a Britain that protects its Jews, that knows what a woman is, that chooses its newcomers rather than being chosen by them, and that can sing its own anthem without shame. If the elites keep blocking that modest program, they will face something far less modest. History is patient until it is not.